Today we're looking at a variety of NHL news from NHL training camps. We're looking at some signings, some injuries, and other things as well. We also have some NHL trade talk concerning John Klingberg in Dallas, Tomas Hertl in San Jose. Plus, we also have confirmation on a move that was made by the Leafs prior to expansion and what exactly they were thinking and planning to do. We'll jump into all that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and notes from around the league to talk about here today. We're going to get started here first with a signing, and then we're going to go through some other notes from around a variety of NHL training camps. First up, we get word today that the Vegas Golden Knights have signed one of their most recent draft picks, and that's 2021 second-round pick Daniil Chayka. Of course, Chayka is from the Czech Republic, represented by Gold Star and agent Dan Milstein. The contract was just announced here in the last little while, but he gets its official 3-year entry-level contract on the books here for Vegas. He does look to be like a pretty promising prospect. From one other piece of news from NHL training camps, the Minnesota Wild have already announced who their new alternate captains are going to be for the upcoming year. Of course, Jared Spurgeon was able to make the announcement in a recent meeting in a dressing room here for the Wild, announcing forward Marcus Foligno and fellow defenseman Matt Dumba as this year's alternate captain. Spurgeon and both of his new alternate captains both gave a quick speech as well, really focusing on building the culture there and wanting to make sure everybody felt inclusive and had a voice in the room, and just really trying to build things up here after a promising upward swing last year. Of course, Kaprizov played a major role in really helping that team be a lot more of an offensive threat, and now that they have him under a new contract here for the next 5 years, they should be able to continue to build where they left off last year. Now, on some other NHL training camp news, we have an injury in Toronto, which is certainly going to complicate things when making their decisions depending on how long he's out. But Pierre Engvall, who's battling with several other players for a bottom six role with the Leafs, is going to be out for a little while with a hip injury. He may not be out too long, but at this point, every preseason game or scrimmage that you are unable to participate in is certainly going to hurt their chances of making the roster. The Leafs have a ton of forwards with varying different contracts, so not only are they going to be looking at experience, they're going to be looking at the math as far as contracts goes and how to make their team the best they feel that they possibly can here heading into the NHL regular season. And Engvall, to me, is one of those players that are kind of on the bubble, so to speak. I know Curtis Gabriel, who they signed away from the San Jose Sharks as a free agent this past offseason, he had his Leaf debut in preseason action and looked pretty good, showing up on the score sheet as well as the physical side and the fight part of the game. So I know he made a good first impression, and many other Leaf players are trying to do the same, including some guys on like a PTO, like a Josh Hosang, for example. And Hosang has even said publicly he doesn't really care where he has to play. If he can get a contract, he'll even go as far as the East Coast League. He doesn't really care. He just wants an opportunity. So we'll see where things go with him and with the Leafs, but certainly an injury like that, it could hurt Engvall's options of making the roster. So we'll see how long that drags on. They also lost goaltender Ian Scott as well, who has had to battle through a lot of personal adversity and injury. Finally gets back, gets into NHL action in a preseason game, and then retweaks his groin. Another groin injury. He's going to miss some time, and that's going to set him back even further. I mean, he's still a promising young goaltender, but injuries have really derailed a lot of him in the past couple of years, and things were looking so good, and then here we go again. So we'll see what happens with him here through the remainder of training camp. It's not quite clear exactly how much time he'll miss. We also saw a pretty scary injury in Vancouver with a new defenseman, Brady Keeper, who was signed away from the Florida Panthers as a free agent. Of course, Panthers did not qualify him. He had an opportunity to become a UFA. Ends up going to Vancouver and suffered a pretty scary leg injury. So not quite clear how long he's going to be out either, but he had to be taken off on a stretcher. Certainly not how he envisioned things going in as Canucks training camp with a brand new team here looking for a chance to get a possibly bigger role. Although I figure with the amount of defensemen they have in camp and on the roster, it was certainly going to be tough for him to get a regular spot in the top six, but at least hopefully declare himself to be like one of the top options for first call-ups or be the number 7 guy or something to that effect. So like I said, he's got lots of competition. Being out injured, not going to help. We also saw Olli Levy not really make a great first impression either. I know in one of their training camp videos that we saw after being skated pretty hard, he was pretty much in agony and looked like his conditioning might not be up to par with some of the other players. I understand some of those practices are pretty intense, and when they do those bag skates, they're meant to really empty the tank, but it just didn't make a good impression, I don't think, on some other Connect coaches. So we'll see what that means for Ulevy going into the season here as well. Speaking of players not making a good first impression, back to the Wild here for a moment. Jordan Greenway was kind of called out by Coach Dean Evison after a lackluster effort in obviously some early play here. He was paired up with some younger players. I believe he was playing with Rossi and Voldy, and they both got good reviews from the coach, and the coach mentioned the veteran guy that was playing with them didn't look so good and was rather disappointing on the effort. So obviously that's not going to go well. I mean, I know certain guys get roster spots because of their contracts, but at the end of the day, he's going to understand that he's got some young prospects there kind of nipping at the roster, trying to get his kind of spot, right? So that's, could we see Jordan Greenway be a player that Minnesota might look to move on from? I mean, he's got a big body. He's got a lot of, come into the NHL with a lot of promise, and hasn't, I wouldn't say he's completely not fulfilled his potential, but he certainly, I think, has more to give, and we'll see. But I know Coach Dean Evison was not impressed with him here so far either. I mean, one other quick note, actually a couple other quick notes. One, the Islanders, we've got confirmation they brought in another goaltender, John Gillies, on a professional tryout. Now, if he impresses them enough to try to get a contract, I'm not really sure exactly where they would fit him on their depth chart. I mean, he might be able to be like an American Hockey League guy, but they've already got, obviously, Varlamov and Sorokin. There's really no spots at the NHL level, and they also have Corey Schneider signed, who's got a lot of NHL experience, was basically kind of considered their number 3. They do have some guys that are already signed as well that could play at the AHL level in Bridgeport. So I don't really know where he would fit. I mean, I know their AHL goaltenders last year didn't, at least statistically, I can't really say I've seen them play a whole lot recently, but I know based on looking at the numbers, it wasn't too impressive. So maybe he could get some playing time there. I don't know, but he's 27 years old now, had a pretty solid college career at Providence. Obviously, Lou Lamoriello's old stomping grounds from way, way back. He looked really promising. Flames drafted him. He came in, he played, I think he went through his full ELC 3 years, mostly playing in the American Hockey League. Had some good, solid AHL numbers. I think it was 17, 18. Really, really looked good. So he got good numbers at every level, just hasn't really proven himself to get to the NHL level in any kind of consistency. So we'll see. I mean, it might be one of those things that maybe he turns out to be a late bloomer. I don't know. But I'm just not sure if the Isles were to sign him where he would fit or where he would try to get some playing time. So we'll have to keep an eye on that situation. And speaking of tryouts, James Neal certainly made a good first impression with St. Louis in his first preseason action, scoring a hat trick for St. Louis. So we know James Neal obviously has the ability to score goals, and getting 3 goals in his first game, I don't know if that'll lead to a contract. I would think the Blues are going to want a bigger sample size, but at the end of the day, they also have to factor in here that when you're playing preseason hockey, you're not getting the top full NHL rosters either, right? So at the same time, depending on who he's going up against for defenders and goaltenders, you have to factor all that in. But it shows that he can still score and he can still be an impact player at times. The problem with the last few years, he just doesn't seem to do it with any kind of consistency like he once did when he was scoring 25, 30, and 40 goals on a fairly consistent basis. But James Neal could very well turn out to be a good find for St. Louis. I know after completing that trade, Zach Sanford for Logan Brown, that does free up some cap space. Obviously, Sanford was making $2 million. Brown's only making $750,000. That gets them under the cap. Plus, they have the option of Sundqvist going on LTIR. So they probably could squeeze in another contract in there as well. So we'll see where things go, but could be an interesting situation for the Blues to try to add another scorer. And of course, we don't know how long Tarasenko is going to be a Blue. He may be there long term. That may not be factored into their cap situation if they don't end up making a trade after all. Now, before we jump into the remainder of today's video, I do want to pause for a moment and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. Of course, with Manscaped, we have a special offer here for all Top Shelf Hockey viewers where you can get 20% off and free shipping on all orders at manscaped.com. Now, of course, Manscaped just launched a brand new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is a fantastic product. They've taken the level up here even again with the skin safe replaceable blades. It's waterproof, it's wireless charging, has a travel lock on it, as well as a nice light so you don't miss what you're doing. So certainly a terrific product. Now, many people associate Manscaped with their trimmers, which is certainly kind of their top product, but they do have a lot of other great options as well, including what they call the Weed Whacker, which is another trimmer for your ears and nose. And they have a variety of deodorants and sprays as well, which also keep you fresh and are terrific as well. So certainly Manscaped has a lot to offer, and we certainly highly recommend all of their products. So check out manscaped.com and use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. So thanks very much for watching that promotional content. I do greatly appreciate it. Also want to give a quick shout out to our channel membership holders. Again, I know I've been trying to mention this often because you're all very much appreciated for all the support you offer as well through the membership fees that you pay, as well as all the people who bought merchandise. Give them super thanks. I just want to make sure everybody's aware that I see and acknowledge everything. Very much appreciated. Thank you very much. And we're certainly getting excited here for the NHL season to get underway, and so we can continue to grow this channel to hopefully bigger and better things as well. Now, I want to talk a bit about the Maple Leafs here today. Of course, we know going into the expansion draft, they made a trade with the Penguins, picking up Jerard McCann. Now, some had wondered, was he picked up specifically for the expansion draft? Was he picked up and, maybe they want to keep him and expose Kerfoot? What was the plan going to be? Well, there's a new video put out on the Toronto Maple Leafs official YouTube channel called The Leaf Blueprint Looking Forward, where they show some behind-the-scenes footage of Kyle Dubas, Brendan Shanahan, and their entire team of management and scouts talking and getting ready for the expansion draft and the rest of the offseason. And they specifically address that while Kyle Dubas comes out and talks about the fact that they have an opportunity to acquire McCann from Pittsburgh. The asking price is Philip Hollander and a late pick. And they go on to talk about the fact that they very well could pick him up to make him the player that is most attractive for the Seattle Kraken to take in the expansion draft. You heard some of their other members of their team making the argument that the Maple Leafs, instead of protecting, going the 7-3-1 method, that they should go with 4 defensemen protected and go with the 8 skaters route, because they really were happy with their top 4 defense. They felt that they fit well, they were productive, they liked how they played together, and they really didn't want to see anything broken up that way because of the expansion draft. So they felt that that was an important piece, and of course protect the big 4 forwards, and then that way they pretty much almost guarantee that they lose a forward. And by adding McCann, they thought McCann might be more attractive, I guess, than Kerfoot to Seattle. And I guess, we all said all along that it was most likely that was the reason. But some wondered, did they really want to sacrifice McCann? Or was it a case of they might have preferred the Kerfoot to go and keep McCann? Depending on who you ask, there seems to be different opinions on which one was the better fit, better player. But obviously Kerfoot was a guy who's already been there, a player they're already familiar with, and somebody who they liked and wanted to keep if they could. Obviously decent contract. So obviously we just got further proof that McCann certainly was indeed acquired specifically to be sacrificed to Seattle, which is not a huge shocker, but it's just, we don't often get that behind the scenes stuff to kind of confirm what a lot of us were thinking and felt was being done for that purpose. Now, just a reminder as well, we're not that far away from October the 1st. October the 1st on Amazon Prime, the Maple Leafs series that's coming out, All or Nothing, will be released on Amazon on that day as well. So certainly check that out. I know I plan to watch it, just curious to see behind the scenes. You don't often get to look behind the curtain and see what's being said by the GM, by the coach, how the players really feel that they won't say in a normal interview. And I'd like to see more stuff like that done around the NHL to give, I think from the fans' perspective, it'd be fun to watch. Now on to a couple other quick notes here. When it comes to potential trades, I know we've talked about Tomas Hertl a few times off and on here over the offseason, especially after he conducted an interview saying he wasn't sure what his future was going to be like with the San Jose Sharks. There's new reports as well indicating that Doug Wilson and the Sharks intend to talk discussion, and there's a rumor now that Hertl might even be willing to sign and give them a little bit of a hometown discount if he can get a longer term deal. I mean, based on that report that he had given before in the interview, to me, I think a lot of that was fueled partially by the Kane situation and the fact that the team has been on the downward swing, but he's still young enough that if they feel he can be a part of the solution to help the team move forward, then I can understand why they might want to offer him a longer term deal. But of course, it really boils down to business here and money. I'm not 100% convinced that deal gets done because he hasn't really, obviously he's not going to share all his feelings publicly about if he wants to resign or not. But like I said, there have been some reporters that cover the Sharks indicating that there is word going around that he may give a bit of a hometown discount for a long-term deal. So, that might be preferable to him rather than wait until another year and to face free agency and have that opportunity to sign anywheres. But if they don't get a contract done, then I still feel he'll be one of the most likely top names available at the trade deadline or leading into the trade deadline that we could certainly see moved, if not even sooner. There's certainly plenty of teams out there looking for help down the middle, and he could be that middle sixth center to help a lot of teams that are going to be making a playoff push especially. So we'll see where things go. Hard to say what the future holds, but at least at this point it does seem a little bit more optimistic that a potential possibility for him staying in San Jose and signing a new contract. So we'll see where things go on that front. And as far as futures and signing an extension goes, there's still more reports that the local Dallas Stars media feel that there's a good chance that John Klingberg may not play in Dallas beyond the coming season. It's not so much that they don't want to keep him, it's just that he's been a pretty productive, good defenseman. The defense market absolutely exploded this past offseason, and looking at the money they have tied up to guys like Miro Heiskanen, who they signed to a mega contract. They got Lindell and Suter, who they came in, making a pretty decent amount of money as well. Can they really afford Klingberg as well? I mean, with the numbers he's put up, he's not going to be that far off from what Heiskanen get paid, right? So can they afford to have two defensemen making $7-8 million? I don't know that they can. Now, of course, I do have some other veteran forwards that may not be around beyond one more year, which might free up the money to make it happen to keep him. But do they want to do that? I don't know. But guys like Joe Pavelski and Alexander Radulov don't have much term left in their contract, so they may not be around. But then how do you replace those guys? I know they played most of last year without Radulov, and obviously it showed between him and Seguin being out that was a big blow and really impacted their offense, which certainly impacted how many hockey games they could win. They didn't miss the playoffs by a lot, so it goes to show you just, that little bit was the difference, really. Having Seguin and Radulov out, you could say was the difference in their season. So clearly, do they want to lose all that offensive talent up front to keep Klingberg, or do they go the other way? It's just really difficult to say. But at this point, getting Klingberg locked up on an extension, there really hasn't been much talk about it here so far. So again, a lot of it depends on how the season goes, because personally, I can see Dallas being right in the mix for a playoff spot in the Central Division. Last year, like I said, they only missed by a tiny bit, and really they're getting a lot of players back like Radulov, like Seguin for a full year that can make a huge difference in this team. The players coming back alone is enough to look at like they made a big acquisition and have some new players coming in. It's the same sort of impact, right? So clearly, if they're in a hunt for playoffs and if they think they have a shot at winning a few rounds, they're not going to trade John Klingberg, right? So to me, he only would get traded if a season goes really poorly and it's not looking good for playoffs, and it's just that simple. But they do risk losing him in free agency if that indeed is the case, because I mean, it's a player that like him would get a pretty good return, and that's not something they want to pass up on if they're not going to be able to re-sign him. But I think it's a kind of an iffy situation. They need to start planning for next year and beyond with these guys, because they can't all stay, at least not at the price tags like they're going to be getting. Like Klingberg is a guy who's still on his way up. This will be his last probably big contract, where guys like Radulov and Pavelski to stick around in Dallas or elsewhere, they are at the later stages of their career, may have to take less money, so they're the other swing here. So we'll see. I'm not sure if Jim Nill can make the money work to keep a lot of that intact. They might need to find some younger, cheaper options to kind of replace some of that offensive output if they have any hope in keeping Klingberg in the mix. But it's not going to be easy, and he could be a player traded this year. But like I said, if they're in the mix for playoffs, and I expect them to be, it could be one of those situations that he could be, a huge UFA next year if nothing gets done. So let me know what your thoughts are on the future of John Klingberg in Dallas down below, as well as everything else we've talked about here today. And down in the comment section, we'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.